All right, here we go. Let's talk about this crazy weather. Things are about to change a lot over the next few days. We're going from record breaking cold temperatures straight into what's basically a winter heat wave as we head into early next week. On top of that, there are a few more big storms on the way, and we're even looking at the possible return of some severe weather. So, in today's forecast, I'm going to break down everything you need to know about the wild weather that's going to impact the United States over the next 7 to 10 days. Let's start with what's happening across the country this morning. For most of the lower 48, things are looking a lot calmer, but the temperatures, not so nice. It's still very cold out there, and a lot of areas still have snow on the ground. The biggest thing happening right now is a small low-pressure system spinning back over the Rockies, bringing some light snowfall to parts of Colorado and Utah. That system's going to weaken later today, though, and after that, the only real snow left will be up in the Northeast. Even then, it's mostly just some light lake effect or a few coastal snow showers. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Over in the Pacific Northwest, we've got this big atmospheric river that's mainly hitting Canada, but a little bit of that moisture is spilling into parts of Washington, bringing some rain as we head into the weekend. All right, let's talk about these temperatures. Right now, we're dealing with a huge area of below average temps, pretty much anywhere east of the Rockies. Some places are sitting a staggering 40 degrees below average this morning, which has led to some record-breaking cold temperatures. But that's all about to change. As we go into the weekend and early next week, that cold air is going to start backing off. By Saturday afternoon and into Sunday, it'll still be chilly in parts of the Southeast and the Tennessee Valley, but overall, we're going to see temperatures climbing. By early next week, high pressure is going to dominate almost the entire United States, and that's going to lead to a big warm-up. We're talking warm air flooding up from the south. Places like South Dakota could hit the 60s, and I wouldn't even rule out some 70s in parts of Nebraska and South Dakota on Monday. That's crazy. We could be breaking some high temperature records early next week. It's honestly like the weather is completely confused right now. One day we've got record-breaking lows, and just a couple of days later, we're looking at record-breaking highs. By Tuesday afternoon, that warm air is going to spread across almost the entire lower 48. And there will be very few spots that are even slightly below average. But, this back and forth pattern isn't over yet. By the middle to end of next week, I do think we'll see another shot of cold air, maybe even some Arctic air moving into parts of the Northeast. It could end up feeling just as cold as the central and northern plains did this week. That's something we'll definitely be watching as we get closer to next weekend. Looking even farther ahead, things get a little more uncertain. But I do think areas like the northern plains and the Northeast are going to end up colder than average again as we wrap up February and head into early March. And if you're down in Florida, keep an eye out for falling iguanas. It's that cold down there right now. But by the weekend, that cold air is going to ease up. We'll still see some single digits and teens in the Midwest and below freezing temps down into parts of Texas and the Dixie Alley, but things will start warming up pretty quickly after that. By Sunday and Monday, that cold air is going to retreat back up where it belongs, up in the Arctic and Canada. And that's when we start seeing those crazy warm temperatures, mid to upper 50s, 60s, and even some 70s across the Central Plains. Kansas could see 70s on Monday in February. That's nuts. The Southeast is going to warm up too. And if you've got snow on the ground in places like Virginia or North Carolina, a lot of it's going to be melting by Sunday and Monday. By Tuesday, I think we're going to hit the warmest day of the week, with some areas maybe getting even warmer than the models are showing right now. Texas and Oklahoma, you're looking at 70s and 80s by Tuesday. It's a complete flip from the deep freeze we've been talking about over the last few days. And you knew there'd be but that cold air is going to start creeping back down from Canada again by the end of next week. Now, the temperatures aren't the only thing going on. We're also going to see some big changes in terms of rain and snow. A lot of that has to do with our jet stream pattern. Right now, things are pretty quiet across most of the lower 48, aside from that little low pressure system bringing some light snow. But as we head into the weekend and early next week, there's one system we'll need to watch. A shortwave throw-off over Texas is going to develop on Sunday and Monday, bringing some heavy rain and possible flooding along the Gulf Coast from Texas through Mississippi and maybe even into Florida. That system's going to weaken as it moves east, but it's still something to keep an eye on. By Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll see some light snow and rain in the Midwest and Northeast. Nothing too major, just some scattered showers and maybe a few Alberta clippers coming out of Canada. As we move toward the end of next week, though, I do think we'll see a bigger storm system developing around the Ohio Valley and Southeast. It could bring a mix of snow, rain, and maybe even some thunderstorms, but the models aren't showing anything too intense just yet. In terms of rainfall, the heaviest amounts are going to be along the Gulf Coast, around 1 to 3 inches from Houston to southern Louisiana and Mississippi, with some spots getting up to 5 inches. It's not as much as what we saw in Kentucky last week, but it's still enough to cause some flooding in low-lying areas. Snowfall chances are staying pretty low for most of the central and southern U.S., the upper Midwest, and Northeast have the best shot at seeing at least an inch of snow through the end of February, but places like the central and southern plains, almost no chance of snow right now. Wind chills, though, are still going to be rough. Across the Midwest, we'll see them drop below zero, but the good news is I'm not seeing those double-digit below zero wind chills this time around. That said, if you're in Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Iowa, much of Minnesota, eastern Nebraska, northeast Kansas, northern Missouri, or even parts of Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, you're going to be waking up to temps between 0 and maybe 10 degrees at the coldest point of the night. So bundle up if you're heading out early tomorrow morning, shifting out west. We saw a pretty big range of temperatures this afternoon, not lots of 20s and 30s, but also some 70s and even a couple of 80s showing up in far southern California and southern Arizona. As for low Saturday morning, higher elevations of the Rockies will be the coldest, but outside of those areas, we're looking at more 20s, 30s, and even some 40s. Over in the east, highs this afternoon were mostly in the teens and 20s, a noticeable warm-up from earlier in the week, but overnight, lows will drop back into the single digits and teens, areas with a deeper snowpack, like upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, could see temps near or just below zero. And with those wind chills, we could still see them struggle to reach 10 below, maybe even closer to 15 or 20 below in some spots. So if you're heading out early in the morning, make sure to cover up any exposed skin. Frostbite can happen fast in those kinds of conditions. As we move into the weekend, the temperature pattern stays interesting. The eastern U.S. will lean below normal, while the west, especially western Canada and Alaska, stays above normal. And while things are mostly quiet across the lower 48 right now, there is some light rain and drizzle happening in south central Texas and along the Rio Grande. Plus, there's a system bringing heavier rain to western Washington state. Seattle, you're seeing some of that liquid precipitation tonight, while higher elevations in northern Washington and parts of British Columbia are dealing with snow. Going through Saturday, we'll see that moisture stick around in Seattle and parts of British Columbia, with some drizzle and rain showers developing down in coastal Texas, places like Corpus Christi, Houston, and Galveston. By Saturday evening, those showers spread north toward Waco and Tyler and even into Lake Charles, Louisiana. We could hear a few rumbles of thunder in those areas, but nothing too intense. As we push into Sunday morning, the Pacific Northwest sees more widespread rain. And this time, it stretches further south into Oregon, reaching Portland, Eugene, and Medford. Even parts of northern California could get in on that moisture. Higher elevations will pick up some snow as that system moves inland into Idaho and western Montana. Now, as for severe weather potential, there's some good news. We're not seeing any major threats this weekend. Saturday's outlook just shows a general thunderstorm risk across southeast Texas, Louisiana, and southwest Mississippi. We're talking your run-of-the-mill garden variety storms. Maybe some heavy rain and small hail at worst. By Sunday, that area shrinks, with only southern Louisiana hanging on to a low thunderstorm risk. Rainfall amounts this weekend will stay light for most of the country. The Pacific Northwest and parts of the Gulf Coast will pick up the most, especially Seattle, Portland, and Eugene, where a couple of inches of rain are possible. Over in Houston and Lake Charles, we could see 1 to 2 inches as well. Looking ahead to next week, the last week of February, the polar vortex stays where it should be, parked up in northern Canada, but we'll still get a little push of cold air into the eastern U.S. Meanwhile, a big ridge builds over the west, stretching all the way up into western Canada and Alaska, which will keep temperatures warmer than normal in those areas. That warmth really shows up on the temperature anomaly map, with above normal temps covering much of Canada and the western U.S. As for the east, will probably stay closer to normal, maybe even leaning a bit below normal. It's also shaping up to be a drier week overall, especially for the Gulf Coast and the Ohio River Valley. By early March, though, things could get a little more interesting. We're seeing signs of a split pattern, colder than normal temperatures in the east and warmer than normal conditions out west. That setup could lead to some bigger storm systems developing, with heavy rain and isolated severe weather possible along the Gulf Coast and into the southeast. And further north, areas like the northern plains, Great Lakes, and interior Northeast could see several inches of snow with those storms. So we've got a lot to keep an eye on as we head into early March. I'll be here to keep you updated every step of the way with the most reliable and accurate weather info. Thanks so much for watching, and you guys can help me get there. Don't forget to hit that like button if you found this video helpful and share it with your friends, family, and social media. I'll see you all tomorrow with another weather forecast. Take care and stay warm.